We just did this.
Right. Okay. So you're both so Justin and Patrick. You're so founder of JMC Consulting, and Patrick, what's your title now? Head of
I
everything.
guess on paper, on my LinkedIn profile, it says I'm the GM of Justin Michael Consulting.
GM of Justin Michael Consulting.
Or the head of sales training you could do for this one, Patrick, because that might be more apropos to the future of sales. Your choice.
Whatever.
Fine.
It doesn't really matter that much.
No, I know. Fine. Okay. I'll make it up. Fine.
I don't even know anymore. I'm just talking head,
I haven't had the same job for more than 8 months in a row in the past 7 years.
That's a great start.
I'll put that. We could just start. Let's just start. Let's just record. I'm just going to go. I'm not going to bother doing the edit. I'm going to keep this rough and ready. I mean, normally introduce it. So welcome everybody. We've already started, as you can hear and see, and I'm delighted to have an old friend. Justin on the line, and a new friend Patrick on the line. Justin is the founder of his own consulting company, JMC Consulting, and Patrick is either the GM or the head of sales training, or whatever we're going to be on all of this. And this isn't scripted, and as any listeners to my podcast kind of know that. So I thought today we just unpack the future of sales. There's a lot of conversation out there happening around what isn't going to happen, what is happening, this is dead, that's dead, if you do this, don't do that, and I'm kind of bored of it. So let's first, Patrick, let's start with you. What's your background? Yeah. Who are you? What's this all about?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up, like just tying in, I don't know, what we just said, what we were just saying to the future of sales. Like, I think that there is a tie in there. I really haven't held the same job for a long time in the past, like 5 to 7 years. I was a high school math teacher for 4 years. So I did that job for the same amount of time. But then I don't know, I kind of did a bunch of different things. And then I got into sales, and I did a bunch of different sales gigs. But I think the point that I was trying to get to is, like, I think in the immediate future, you got to take some of these job requirements away from the roles. Like, there's no need to have a 4-year degree to do SDR work. In most cases, it's like glorified data entry. There's just so many other things that you could look at to determine whether or not someone's going to be successful. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think that's coming down the pipe. I didn't really answer your question at all, but that's
so
the first thing I thought of.
You were a math teacher. I think you were I think you were the first math teacher I've met, which has pivoted into sales. So
I'm surprised it doesn't happen more, especially with the math people, because they can add. You know what I mean? They know how much money they make, and how much money they could make. Just and how much work they're doing. Like there's a trade-off here. I'm doing a lot more work and getting a lot less money. So yeah, that's why I moved into sales. I was confused for so long. I thought I was a math person, and it turns out I'm a writer. But I was doing all this math work. I tried to get into insurance, right. And I did an actuary exam. So like complicated statistics for insurance companies.
You work out when people are going to die.
Yeah. It's actually, like, the best actual definition that I heard of it was actuaries assess current value to future risk.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought I was going to do that. I got a job as an analyst at an insurance company. And I was like putting together these proposals and giving them to the brokers, and like the brokers are all making $500,000 a year selling group health insurance. And I was like sitting in front of the spreadsheet doing a lot of work and making 60 grand a year. And I thought something is wrong here. Like, this is something has gone wrong. How do I get over there? And that sort of started my journey.
So what has your sales journey been then? What kind of roles have you done?
It's all top of funnel. I got a job as an SDR at 30 years old, and I had already been selling life insurance. So I kind of saw what the insurance guys were doing over there. And it got me all fired up about it. And I asked them, I started interviewing every one of them. Like, I was supposed to meet with them to do training, but I was just interviewing them. How do I get your job? And and they told me I should start doing cold calls. They were like, you have to get good on the phone. You have to get good on the phone, because they're like, I got hung up on for 2 years. Like, that's the bare minimum. Like, you have to get in and get on the phones and just get really good at doing that. That's the first step. So that's what I did. I went home and I got Zig Ziglar, Secrets of Closing the Deal, and put it in my headphones. I think I was on a flight somewhere. I remember listening to that book on the plane. And then, yeah, and then I started selling life insurance. So I was like doing 200 dials a day from my bedroom.
Yeah.
And then when I walked into an SDR job, it's like, you're indoors, you're in this nice, like, lofty workspace, and there's kombucha kegs and scooters and all that. And so I just slam dunked right away. Like, I walked in and I hit my ramp quota in, I think, 2 days, and like, I just didn't turn around. I never looked back. So yeah, I hit the ground running there. Was like pacing the team most months, and then I ended up I just kept taking roles down that path. I got offered account executive jobs that I turned down because I didn't want to do that. It just seemed kind of boring to me. Like, I don't know, that even though there was more money there, like, it was more interesting of a problem to try to just book people on the calendar to buy B2B software.
Yeah.
I mean, what jumped out at me about the industry in general is that there's nowhere to go. You have to deal with a sales rep. You can't go to the store and buy outreach.
Yeah.
You can't go to like the Apple store and like buy a license for Zoom Info. Like, you have to deal with a sales rep. So how does it, I mean, yeah, it's like, if I could just stand right there in between, the buyer and the seller, and just help connect the dots for people and make my money that way. I thought it was something that I'd be able to do.
And that's where you are now, right? With Justin and JMC Consulting, you are built bridging that gap, helping sellers create more effective conversations with buyers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, once I did that, I don't know. I did that job at 5 different places in 4 years. It gave me enough exposure to the point where now I'm a consultant. Which is
don't knock it. I'm one for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of exposure. Like, I worked for 2 VPs that left Salesforce, and they were like running the Salesforce instance at Salesforce. So they showed me how to do sales planning and territory carving and quota allocation, and like, just how to keep the cart on the tracks. So I learned a ton there inside of a year. And then I started selling like heavy duty enterprise, like a fraud detection API to, like the biggest companies in the world, 5th largest bank worldwide, big 4 tech companies, like all of them, so I had a pretty serious account list there, and I was able to get a lot of traction. And that's when I met Justin, and he was looking at me like, whoa, you're one of the only other dudes on the planet that like even knows what I'm looking at. So why don't you just come and hang out with me?
And that segues nicely into Justin then. So Justin, you and I have known each other for a while, way back when I was a LinkedIn client. So JMC Consulting has been born. And what is your purpose? What are both of you? What's your purpose in life? What are you trying to solve?
So I feel like I'm in the Italian Job or Ocean's 11. Like, we go to an organization, marketing has taken over, and they've got, Outreach, Sales Loft, let me keep going, Groove, Zant, Ring DNA, whatever players, and they're doing it. We've got the SDRs, we've got the AEs, we're doing automated emails, we're doing calls. And then we look at the results, and we're kind of, okay, how'd that SDR do? Oh, we got 2 meetings last month. Last month? What? And there's like this crazy level of automated activity, but like no revenue, no meetings, no opportunities. And it's just sort of like a Dilbert. If you go in there, everybody's doing all the right things, like in Spaceballs, like, what's your name? I don't want to, but it's like everybody's doing the motions and the Aaron Ross SDR AE, but then the factory's broken. There's no cars coming out of the factory, and all the, everyone's working. So what we're trying to do is actually just, okay, not just cut and paste this model, but as kind of disciples of Aaron Ross, now let's create new efficiencies, and let's come and let's crack the safe. Like, okay, what should the data be? And what should the message be? And like, can we take what you have and slightly tweak it? Because you can usually see it. It's like they're just, it's like a bad MTV music video that you can tell why it didn't hit the charts. It wasn't produced slightly off, but like, right, like if Butch Vig got a hold of it, or so like the Nirvana's producer, he could like, hey, we can make that band good. It's like distressed real estate. We go in and we slightly tweak it. And so they send 1,000 emails, nothing.
Yeah.
We tweak it. They send 1,000 emails, 8 meetings or 10 meetings. Like we've had these amazing experience where, no reply rate, suddenly, 30% response rates. Cause it's just the way they email is, big, long drip marketing email to an existing customer, not hyper short text message to a new customer. So, a lot of it's very granular and tactical, and aligning with neuroscience is the key.
I think it's actually interesting. It's a really interesting problem because although it's really difficult, it's like, you have a low success rate. Like if you're booking, I don't know, 3 out of 10 people that you target, like you're one of, I don't know, a very small handful of people worldwide that can accomplish that reliably, right? Like it's like 95% or more failure rate. But the interesting part is that it's a really, there's not a lot of ingredients. It's a simple system. There's only like the market you're going to talk to. What are you going to say to them? And then how good is the data that you have to reach out to them? Like, that's it. That's all there is. So there's not that many dials to turn, right? So when we get in somewhere and they're having a hard time, it's like, okay, well, how's the targeting? How's the data? How's the messaging? And it's, it's pretty formulaic. And then once you kind of do it 20 times, you see like 20 different companies and how they're all approaching it. It's like, it's rare that I'm surprised anymore.
And is that, so in terms of that, what we're talking, so this is kind of primarily email outreach that we're talking about, or is this cold calling? Is this, what kind of outreach is this that we're referring to?
No one really cold calls. The truth is, the reason these companies like Outreach and Sales Loft, Zant Group, Ring DNA, Plug, the reason they're so popular is, the truth is, like, we love to talk about cold calling. I love to get people to cold call, but the truth is, like, people just don't really do it. Now, I'm one of these crazy people who's done 20,000 hours from a different era. I'm 41 years old. I'm an expert in cold calling if you want to do that. There's a lot of voicemail leaving. Now, if you really want to do cold calling, you got to get Connect and Sell or one of these power dialers, because you have to be able to get complete rates. Because in the enterprise, you call 100 people, you get 3 on the phone. You're dealing with GDPR in Europe. You kind of do permission, Castle, Canada. It's hard. So like, I just had a rep yesterday. He's crushing it with automated touch patterns and sending this digital outbound. So he's primarily doing LinkedIn social, and he's doing digital methods. But in the US, we have shops that are heavy phone. They've got bad phone numbers. They've got switchboards where there's like answering services in the pandemic. So we get them cell phone data. We teach them how to use strategic messages, and we teach them ways to tie social media to messaging. Okay, they looked at your profile 3 times, give them a call. They've opened your sequence 4 times. Another one, 27 opens of the email. I think at this point we want to give a call. Is that okay?
Yeah, we should probably pick up the phone. Well, see, for me, it's by any means necessary. It's like I'm agnostic to the channel. It doesn't matter at all. Like, the last full-time role that I was in, I got a list of 10 accounts, and it was like the 10 biggest accounts in the world that we didn't have any business in, and I was selling to a very niche audience. It's not like, it wasn't sales leaders. It was fraud and risk management, which like they obfuscate their titles. You couldn't tell who did what. Like it was impossible to tell. And I didn't always have the number. So there was like a sort of a limited audience. And if I couldn't get the phone number, like I didn't have a choice. I couldn't go and get a new account. Like I had to figure it out. So I had to use social. I had to use email. So, I mean, to me, it's like, well, what do you have? Can you get the phone number? I had 3 different data sources. I was cross-referencing Zoom info, Lead IQ, and sales intel on every prospect, like just looking, like what do I have, and trying to maximize it. So yeah, that's how I mean, when I talk about outbound, like cold outbound, it's like, whatever you got, throw everything you have at them.
And I think that's certainly what I'm now seeing more and more of, is just so there's tribalism happening on social. We seem to be we went away from it, and now we seem to be coming back to it because of the pandemic. Oh, this only works, that only works, this only works. But what I'm starting to hear more and more of, it's the data aspect has got to be right, but it also, things like, I swear to God that people create research for the sake of research. So if McKinsey on the US side of things analysed 60,000 deals and 80% of them are started via cold call. Yet you look at Gartner research saying 1 in 3 people don't want to talk to salespeople. So Patrick, was interesting picking up on your point around being the you can't go to an Apple store to pick up an outreach. You can't go to a retail out what have you to buy this product. So if we then start to look at where is this going, and we accept that all channels are the right channel, be where your audience is, or rather go where your audience is going to be, what do we believe the role of sales is going to be? And Justin, I was halfway through your moneyballing piece with Mark Roberge, and the way that he was talking about go to market, because it's not sales, it's not marketing, it's actually your overall go to market strategy, which is going to start to shift the dynamic in terms of the types of people that you are going to have to hire in order to achieve this. So, Patrick, I know that Justin obviously, lauds you for your writing skills, even though you started out as a math teacher. So are we going to need people that are good at writing? Are we going to need people that are good at math and have that statistical kind of lens on thing? Need people that are good on the phone, rather than trying to get one size fits all, point them and go?
I think you're always going to need people. You're just always going to need people, because, like, I don't know, there's when you start talking about go to market, what it reminds me of is that how quickly things can come off the rails when the go to market strategy changes. Like, how tight is that organization? Like, are they moving like a glove versus 5 fingers, right? Like, is the sales ops, the marketing team, the sales team, like, is everybody moving in the same direction at the same time? And the answer almost always is no. I've never really seen it unless it's the same person that's doing all of that stuff. Once you kind of, like, once you have 4 or 5 people working on a project, it's very, very, very difficult to get everyone coordinated all the time. So I think that there's always going to be some level of imperfection there, and then you're going to need somebody that can think about it. And I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a way, but here's a good example in education, right? How long has geometry been out, right? Like, we're talking, 2000 BC, the first geometry text, right? When I was a teacher, I was creating geometry curriculum from scratch. How is that the case? It's the year 2015. Like, why am I coming up with, like, how do I teach the geometry class? Like, how is this, how is this not, like, like, etched into a stone tablet somewhere? Like, what? Like, why am I creating lesson plans? So if we can't even do it in 4,000 years of geometry, like, I don't know, the 20-year-old SaaS industry seems doomed.
So here's the trippy thing. Let's get right out in the open. So I took algebra 2. I crushed it. I got to 3/4 trig, and I'm like, cosines? Like, it's like, well, if you want to understand the angle of a flower pot in a window, I was like, it didn't make any sense. How am I going to use this? I met Patrick. It was like, okay, he's like, I'm an SDR. I'm like, yeah, but what do you really do? He's like, pass the actuary. He's a mathematician, Boston University. It's kind of a Goodwill Hunting story. So, I mean, I won't disclose his former salary, but now he's making, serious money, right? We're talking, sub, 6 figures, like, 200 grand type potential here. And he's out earning any SDR. He's earning what a lot of, seasoned executive earns. But why? Because we approach human beings the wrong way. This person went to Stanford for 4 years. That means their family put, $250,000 in their life savings in the education. Oh, took applied statistics. Oh, really? Now what do they do? Well, now they're trying to do $3 an hour data entry work to see if they could qualify to be an account executive. Take the unique genius of the human and groom them. Teach them how to do engineering and coding and data, and rotationally teach them marketing, teach them sales, teach them ops. Like, what is their unique genius, and move them around your organizational chart. Don't hold them in a silo of income potential, in a silo of what they can do, and create an advancement track that's actually a prison. Here's how we're going to limit you, smart human being, to 70% we could automate with a machine. Like, this is we wrote a manifesto called Illuminati, and it's not the jungle. We're not like in the meat packing industry, and there's not inhumane conditions, but this thing is inhumane. We're taking human beings in software as a service, and we're limiting them. And we're taking hugely qualified, strongest AI in the world and saying, build CSV files in Excel. It makes my head explode. I don't know if we want to.
I think it genuinely does go all the way back to the go-to-market strategy falling apart because I don't know, the CRO types get together with the finance types and they decide that they need to hit a certain number and that the salespeople are unreliable and that the data is not there. So they're going to double all the quotas and just see how it pans out. And half of them will burn out and, we'll put them on PIP, we'll manage them out. And then, the other half are have contacts and they'll pull the business and then we'll hit the number, right? Like that's it's just a common play. Like I wish I could say I was making it up. Like I've seen.
I know you're not. I know you're not. And the whole quota thing I think is an interesting one. I'm starting. Forrester are now starting to talk about this. Seth Mars is starting to talk about this in terms of comp and comp plan. I've been in a carrying a bag, doing the dials, etc., etc. And the comp plan created a certain behaviour, which I adhered to because that was the behaviour which then made sure the comp plan was met. Did it actually necessarily mean it was the best for the best for the customer, or if we did things differently, we could have done better, probably. But it comes back to, I guess, that's the way we've always done it. And you both talk about the fact that we now have automation, we're churning all the numbers out, and it's not kind of hitting because the data's slightly wrong, the way the email's written is wrong, the reps aren't understanding how to look at the data and so on because they're in this box and do not deviate. So, is this? This is a leading question. Is this because we have this layer of management which is stuck in the dark ages? Patrick, to your point, 4,000 years of geometry, and we still can't get it right. So, do we? Let's rephrase the question. If you both could build a SaaS company from the ground up, what would the construct of your sales organization look like?
I've got this one because I've thought a lot about it. I think there would be a revenue team, and they all have the same success criteria. So that's sales, that's marketing, and that's ops. Like the revenue ops, people like to call it revenue ops. They hire a chief revenue officer and they like change the reporting structure. But then you walk into the company and everything is the same. Like the sales rep sitting there, he has no idea what the ops analyst is doing. Actually, the ops analyst, there's only 3 of them, and there's 150 people that they're trying to take care of at the same time. Like the budget hasn't been allocated correctly. Like it's a hot mess. So I would seriously just put all those people into one department, and then they get bonused on the same incentive. Like they're incentivized on the same metrics. Like this is the goal that you are to accomplish. Figure it out. Like all of you have to work together. You can't do it alone. There's no one-man army. So yeah, that's the first thing that I would do.
I like that. I really like that because it's to your point in terms of, Patrick, when you were talking about that those are your defined accounts, you couldn't go anywhere else. You had to figure out a way to get into those accounts. So then what I'm hearing, and Justin chime in, this is bringing in those different skill sets. Someone who's good at writing, someone who's an analyst, someone who's good on the phone. Almost kind of forget job titles, if you will. These skill sets we believe can come together to create the best outcome, which is trying to generate revenue. It's making an assumption here that you've got some good systems in place to enable this. Be it, as in systems, I mean actually technology like an Outreach, a Gong, or what have you. Go figure it out. Come back in 12 months' time and tell us you've hit your number. Whether you hit that number in month 11 or month 1, we don't really care.
Yeah. I mean, it's the hard part is that I think that the SaaS industry is just really young. 20 years is not a long time. Even a company like Microsoft has double the amount of time on the market. So I think we take some of these scaled up concepts and then try to bring them down to 100-person startup, and it just doesn't work the same. Like when you only have a limited amount of talent and there's only so many people in the building, everybody kind of has to wear multiple hats. And then we try to have these really rigid role definitions. And I think that's where we get stuck. Like that's where things fall apart. When people are limited, there's no reason to be so limiting about the way that you're hiring. This individualized role specialization, it makes sense at 10,000 employees because you have a very specific role that you need filled, and the individual does not have as much impact. But I don't know. And there's less than 500 employees. Each person in the building carries a different weight than when you have, when you're Amazon. It's a totally different feeling.
But that's going to start to shift also kind of things like, and again, the bigger challenge with this, I guess, smaller companies, but even if the smaller companies have got investment, then they've got to start reporting to shareholders, and shareholders want their quarterly kind of updates in terms of, hang on a second, we put X amount of cash into this business, where are you? I want to get my reports, and that it's this tension in terms of commercialization versus actually looking after human beings that are trying to get there. And I don't have the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but it's interesting to start to see this conversation now starts coming out around comp. And I think it'll be a brave organization that rips up the rule book and starts to look at things differently. But guess what? You'll get happier employees. So let's not give them a job title. More fulfilled employees stay longer, give you better results because they're happier in terms of what they're doing. Less pressure, and less stress. So, I mean, are you talking to any kind of forward-thinking companies that are starting to think this, or are they still stuck in there? This is the process. This is what we've got, and this is how we're going to do it.
Most of them have seen or dealt with are relatively like boilerplate kind of templates for the organizational structure. I haven't seen anything too radical. I have heard about some flat orgs though, where instead of even having like a seniority it's like a totally flat org. There's no org chart, and everybody makes $100K a year, and then whatever extra, like if there's like a quarterly bonus that gets paid out on revenue, and everybody gets the same bonus, like the CEO all the way down to the whoever's washing the floors or whatever.
No, I think I can totally see. I can see that model working. In terms of we always need people. Yet you look at the world of guided selling, that narrative that's now starting to come out, AI kind of starting to rear its head again. Where, from what you're seeing and what you're understanding from the technology piece, and I'm thinking like, was it Gong that's now building sentiment analysis into emails and all this kind of stuff, and the crazy world of where this is all going. How automated do we have to get before we realize it's too automated?
It depends what you're automating.
Let's do so. I'm thinking in terms of from a seller, automating things like outreach. So be it emails, marketing campaigns, whatever it might be. You can't really automate outreach in terms of, I know you got the robo dialers and stuff, etc., but that's going to get more and more kind of restricted. But the automation in terms of outreach around email, connections through LinkedIn, and so on. How far do you think we're going to go before there's a pushback either from the buyers going, I'm just fed up and pissed at this, it's just not working for me anymore, or to the point where actually buyers realize they do actually need somebody in the process to have a human conversation with?
I think we're there. I mean, okay. I honestly, I think we're there now. I see it. I don't know if it completely, if there's been, a shift in the herd mentality just yet. But I think that we're there with the automation. Like, people have this idea that if I buy a sales engagement platform, and I go online and I grab some email templates, and I put a call step in there, and then I hire 10 sales reps that are entry level that have never sold anything before. They've never even picked up the phone to order a pizza. But if I put them in front of outreach and then have them click these buttons, like, we're going to get revenue. And it train wrecks every time. Like, I've never seen that work out well. Like, when somebody like really thinks about it and they plan and they understand their ICP, like they have their value props down, like they've established some product market fit, like then you can start to, itemize the roles on the sales team. But until then, it's like, it's a knife fight, and you're going to spend a lot of money making those kinds of mistakes. I mean, you look at the base salary times 10 plus the tech stack on each one. You could spend $1 million really quickly and not get anything out of it. And that's when the sales director gets fired usually.
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, that's some scary thoughts when you start to talk about those sort of numbers at the small level, let alone what's happening at the large level. Yeah, we're seeing some of the valuations that happened during a global pandemic for some of these organisations is north of $1 billion. So the market still thinks that there's stuff here. Justin, I know you have a take on that.
Yeah, so it blew my mind. I was meeting with these venture capitalists, these seed and equity funds, and I roll in some of these circles, as I know you do. I was in Northern Idaho. And it came to my attention that in 2019, 40% of the funding rounds are over 100 million. Now, back in the day, like in the late 2000s, even the early aughts, 10 million was a good round. The IPO market is gone. It's secondary markets. Nobody wants to be, maybe like going through what WeWork or Uber went through, however you perceive it. It's tough to become a publicly traded company. And sometimes the secret sauce gets spilled. Sometimes, you have to, it's like how Elon Musk doesn't file patents because he doesn't want to be copied, right? So the issue now is you have all these small companies getting crazy valuations, and a lot of great companies getting valuations. And like today, a great company, what was it, Dooley,
yeah,
automation got 20 million, right? That kind of money, 20 million for a startup, was a big deal 10 years ago, and hard. And maybe Andreessen would do it. So Mark Andreessen in 1999 said software will eat the world. Well, what happens? You've got shipping SaaS and trucking SaaS and landscaping SaaS and hardware SaaS, and everything is a software as a service. Then what happens? Then they all have to raise $100 million. Then what happens? They all need humans to power the sequencers and to make the cold calls. And so what do you have to do? You have unskilled workers. You have all these folks that left the restaurant business, they left airlines, hospitality, and they have to learn how to be a sales development rep. So you get this like insane wall of noise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you were talking through that, it sort of made me think that there's like a really obvious discrepancy that I think almost everyone overlooks is the fact that, if you're a founder of a startup and you can convince a VC that you've got something that people want to buy, you're off and running. They've given you the money. And now you have to give it back to them at a certain rate. I mean, it's like you've started this game that you're not really sure you can win yet. like you managed to get the guy to bankroll you, but they're over there. They're not even really looking at what's happening. They saw your slide deck, and they back channel and they do their research and they figure it out and they say, is there actually tech there or whatever? But the VCs ultimately, they're very detached from the market. Like they don't really know like who's going to buy what, and because you see investments all the time that don't make any sense. So I think, right there, like right at that point, there's like, we're going to give you money to go and sell this thing and then use that money to figure out whether or not you can sell it. It just seems like there's something has gone awry. This surely can't be the best way to do things.
I guess it creates the kind of the ever perpetuating circle because the more press and the more PR that this gets talked about, it creates back to the news. Something I think you talked about the herd mentality. It's like it's almost the FOMO. It's like, oh my goodness, we've got to give this next piece of tech on top of this next piece of tech. And my other recent podcast talking to Seth Mars at Forrest about this. He says there's kind of a war at the moment in terms of which piece of tech is fighting to get to be the front. To be the kind of the in front of the seller and making sure that theirs is in front of everything else. And is there going to be the tech on top of the tech on top of the tech? And I guess this is where maybe the Microsofts and the Salesforces are going to come in and start consulting, or maybe even Google, who knows, or even Amazon. I mean, Christ, Amazon's just opened up its first cashless store in London, following what's happening in the US. So first Amazon store in London, fresh real foods with nobody there, but. Maybe we're going to see the consolidation of this market. I know, Justin, you've talked about it, that the future of sales will eventually come, from a tech perspective, will come full circle. It will just be Microsoft and Salesforce and possibly a Google. Who knows?
Well, I think part of the problem is that the companies that are building the technology for the reps are guessing at what the reps need. Like they're not actually sure. They're actually trying to retrofit the sales process to the technology in a lot of cases. I think Gong's really sharp. I think that what they're doing isn't really going to go away. Even just, conversational intelligence, record all the calls and like run AI on it. Like, even if you just call it just collect the data, just get it in there and start thinking about it, start looking at it. I think that's probably smart. I do see a disruption tool coming. I've been talking to Justin. I've been talking to anybody that would listen to me about this idea for a tool that I have. And it's, it's really just like a stripped down prospecting tool. There's too much, context switching. If I could connect it to a data source, have it fill in the data for me, give me a panel to send emails that I never really have to switch off of the same screen. And then actually like break it down into the parts, the efficient parts of what I do,
Yeah.
that the people that are coding the software that are up in, I think about them almost like up in the ivory tower at these sales engagement, these billion dollar companies, like they don't really have a good vantage point for what it's like for the individual rep.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff that they're building is like is nice. It sells. You could sell it to the marketing team. You could sell it to the sales leaders, and give them this story that, this feature is going to put this result in place. And I don't know that it's always true. So I think that something is going to disrupt that at some point.
I think you raised an interesting point there, because if I think about all the CRM implementations that I've been on the receiving end of, that's been led by somebody who doesn't actually understand the end person's job. So you have all these buttons and widgets and go, well, that doesn't help me do my job more efficiently. That actually makes my job way more freaking complicated. Why did you not consult me before this was given to me? Because actually there's a heap of shit, so I'm not going to use it. I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet.
Yes, exactly right. I mean, look, I didn't figure it out until I actually stripped the entire tech stack away and started like running campaigns out of a Gmail account with a Google Sheet, just to manually track my activity. And I mean, I was like, I had templates that were saved in Notepad, and I was like copy pasting them into the Gmail panel. And then I was like using, the spreadsheet to keep track of where I was. And then I realized, like, oh my God, I have so much more flexibility. It was like a light bulb went off. Like I'm not beholden to that sequence that's there, because each prospect is even each contact at each account is a slightly different case. Like, like sometimes I have the number, sometimes I don't. Like, why is there a call step there every time? Anyway, like, I mean, there's just so many things like that once I deconstructed it, I realized like a lot of the stuff that's in there that you spent all this money on, that you had to, hire 2 different people to get it integrated and to monitor the, whatever, set up the dashboards and all this. There's not a lot there that actually ends up getting used. And I don't know, so it was like this aha moment that I had, that you don't need every it's like the software was made for the seller was not made for the software. But when you're a rep that walks into a company, like you just got started, you're 22 years old and you just started your first job in during COVID, you walk in and you get an outreach panel, and to you, like, that is sales. Like, you follow this process and that's how you do sales. But in reality, it's you have to connect somebody that with a pain that they're trying to solve with someone that can solve it.
I think you've raised a really interesting point there, Patrick, in terms of each case, or kind of each prospect is subtly different. And I think that's again where kind of people have, it's was it Fallon Fatami? Certainly, I believe she said sales is the science is only as good as the art of of sales. And I guess that's the one size doesn't fit all. And also, hearing you talk as I'm thinking this through in my my mediocre brain, we've over engineered a relatively straightforward process in terms of what's now happening. If you think about what sales is, it's just starting conversations with people. How do you start a conversation with people? We'll find the best way to start a conversation with that person, then just talk to them. And I think we've become, the Uberization of the world, or the Amazonification of the world. Sometimes that we think that the app or the technology is actually the best solution to all this. Well, actually, with human beings, it probably isn't. It's just actually being human and just talk to a person as you would just a person like your grandmother, your father, your relative, lover, or what have you. So yeah, I think the future of sales is maybe. Do you unengineer things? How do you unengineer things? Deconstruct. I don't know. Maybe the future of sales is deconstructing sales back to what it was 4,000 years ago when Pythagoras was figuring out the theory of the hypotenuse and all that kind of stuff.
My theory is, as long as 70 to 80% of all of it is automatable, we have to take the human off all the automated parts. So what's really, like, you talk to Kai-Fu Lee or some of these futurists, like the ability to dream, imagine, synthesize. Some of the processes that a human brain does are so sophisticated, it'll be hundreds of years There's elements that are irreplaceable. The human needs to fit into the revenue value chain in places where it's most highly leveraged. Otherwise, we really have an industrial de-evolution where we're being limited by technology, where we're basically, it's like the Matrix, we're just sitting in pods to harvest their energy. We have to be leveraged in the high quadrant of strategic selling, strategy, not a point solution, a complex solution, complex needs analysis, multi-threading, consensus building, like a gestalt, like whiteboarding, like things that are simplifying the complexity, where our brain can uniquely work with 8 or 10 other brains to bring forward, conductors of the symphony. And then the AI and the ML and all that has to be deployed to take that manual effort off of us. That is a return to innocence, because then we're now selling again. The really big thing you'll see, like with my mentor's work, Tony, is the silent sales floor. Sales has really become marketing analysis. Everyone's just sitting on social media, clicking. People are researching all day for their emails. Not only are we not talking to prospects, we're not even calling the prospects, and we're spending all day passively researching people we're not even reaching out to. What are you? You're an analyst. Yeah. You're a marketing analyst. So sales used to be a verb. And to do that, it's people with people. And this Zoom call right now is sales, because people are talking, and we didn't come up with a script. I didn't know we were going to talk about Pythagoras. I remember trying to figure out how, like, a triangle. I remember like using string on a grass lawn and trying to figure this stuff out. Like, that's what I was doing when I was 14 years old. So look, we got to free up the human. Otherwise, we're going to have a fourth industrial revolution where AI didn't take our jobs. It's basically just we're wasting human ability.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I don't disagree. I think the entire, to me, the future of sales, the future of really any industry where you're trying to have some type of an advancement is in the elegance of simplicity. Can you do the same thing with a less complicated system? Like whenever you can accomplish that, that is, I think is one of the things that we look at in human history and say that was an advancement.
The elegance of simplicity. And I think with that is a perfect way to end this podcast.
Patrick, take that, because that's actually Leonardo da Vinci. Is simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. The problem in this generation in general is that there's nothing new. Everybody has to crack open the history books and discover that everything going on right now was happening 100 years ago, nearly identically. Todd Capone's doing that. He's pulling out all these articles, 1912, and he shows a sales article, and it sounds exactly like today. It's mystifying.
Both of you, this has been an absolute pleasure, as it always is. I always enjoy looking at the chaos in the WhatsApp group of the Borgs and where we go on that. Well, I said, Pythagoras' theorem. We'll be putting that there in a minute. Where can my audience find you both? I guess on LinkedIn, on Twitter, kind of in the ether.
Yeah, LinkedIn's good. My cell number's on there if anybody wants to text me. That's cool. Totally cool.
Memorize the word salesborg, seller and cyborg. That word might be new to you now, but in 2022, when this book comes out, it's going to be a destination and brand. Seller and cyborg, salesborgs.ai is going to be a destination hub. We're doing the world's first ever TQ test. We're going to have some certifications, and really it's the outcome. The goal is we want to create salesborgs in our knowledge factory.
Awesome. I'll put links to all the profiles in the wherever I put this in the podcast or the YouTube thing. For those that are watching on now, I can never do the pointing thing correctly. Patrick, Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And to everyone listening, as always, thank you very much. If you want to be on the podcast, you know what to do. Everyone watching, same rules apply. But wherever you are in the world, stay safe, keep safe, and we'll see you on the flip side.